a store-bought one, and a matcha hot cross bun. Let's make a matcha hot cross bun. It looks so cool. Look at that. It's so cool. Look at the comparison. It's so green. Okay, let's get started. So, all the ingredients and the measurement will be listed down below. Now, this recipe was inspired by a blog that I read to make a matcha hot cross bun, so that'll be a link down below as well. Now, pretty much this recipe is very new to me in terms of the technique. Today we'll be using a technique called tangzong. It's a very traditional way of making soft, milky bread. I mean, typically I'm used to this because obviously a lot of Asian breads are much softer and less sort of typical Western bread. Now, you're going to start off with basically blending a couple of tablespoons of flour with milk and heating it up until you make a really stodgy sort of mixture. That incorporates a lot of heat to help the yeast later on. Now, the recipe at the beginning is very straightforward, really. You're mixing all your wet ingredient and you're mixing your dry ingredients separately and then combining the two. Now, something interesting that I've learned, because this is definitely a new skill for me, was that a lot of the techniques requires sort of really good timing. Now, you don't want the tangzong to basically, cool down too much and lose the heat, because that encourages the yeast growth and also the proofing method, which basically kind of saves you time in the long run as well. Now, typically, when I'm not using this specific method, I'm just using most traditional recipes to make a hot cross bun. You can go with both. It doesn't impact the taste or the flavor whatsoever. It's just a new technique. Now, once you've mixed the dried ingredients, you're going to add the wet ingredients and then incorporate the flour mixture. Now, hopefully by this point, everything basically amalgamates to a very wet dough. Now, do expect a very wet dough. I'm not too sure why. Maybe it's because of the method. It basically makes it a little bit wetter because there's a lot of milk added to make it really fluffy and soft dough. Now, when you come to kneading it, if you're using a machine, I did it by hand, it takes time. So trust the process. Does take time. For me, roughly 15 to 20 minutes of kneading, because you want to incorporate a lot of gluten as well. I'm no Paul Hollywood, but as you can see, it's a really wet dough and you kind of have to appreciate it, because I don't want to incorporate too much flour here, so I'm not encouraging lots of flour dusting, but at the same time, you want enough to basically make sure that it doesn't constantly stick to your hands, stick to the table, and you are kneading it. Now, by the time you finish around about 10 to 15 minutes of kneading, you'll see that the dough will come together on its own. That means you just basically sit back and now relax, because the hard work is done. Now, as you can see here, I had a little bit too much flour, and this is just bad practice, really. But at the same time, this is my first time doing this recipe, so it's completely a learning lesson for me as well. But I don't encourage this much flour. But as you can see, like I said, it does come together and it makes the softest dough I've ever touched in my life. It's so addictive. I meant touching the dough was addictive. It sounded so weird now that I think of it. Anyway, so now it's time to incorporate the fruit. Now, there is no rule as to when you should do it. I prefer doing it before the first proof. Now, just let the fold actually incorporate it and do most of the work. You will find that it gets easier once the fruit distributes itself as well. No special technique here, just make sure that you fold enough so that it spreads out. Now, tip for proofing. This is a tip that I do every time, and it works every time. Hot towel with a nice clean bowl, leave it in a warm area, nothing special, it will double in size. You can also cold proof it, where you just leave it in your fridge for 12 hours or until the next day, and it will also double in size as well. Now, no specific number here, you can divide it however you like. I got 16. Now, that's a big dough there to divide it into 16, but they were great because once they proofed for the second time, they were like your perfect supermarket size hot cross buns.
If you prefer bigger, I will absolutely encourage you to do bigger because they are great. They're great as a treat, but they're also great just for like breakfast as well, if that's something that you're into. But what I do recommend is, no special technique here, but I do recommend just balling it up so that they are even shaped. Okay, the second proof takes about 30 minutes, put it into a warm area and it'll double in size. Now, cleaning time is probably the most satisfying, especially this clip here. I love it so much. Anyway, the cross. Now, the cross is probably the most straightforward part of the whole recipe because it's just part flour, part water, and you're looking for a pancake consistency. Not as loose as a crepe, but something that you can pipe and it wouldn't run. Now, you can see I'm adding more water because it's so dry here, but the consistency you're looking for is like this. Now, specifically, it should be able to hold itself, and that's the whole point. Now, you're going to be putting it into a piping bag, and then you're going to be piping on the cross. Now, there is a special technique for this, and I don't know why this was so satisfying, but because it was so sticky, you kind of need to drag and drop a bit like icing, really. That's what I felt like this was. As you can see, the dough has doubled in size and they're nicely kind of touching. Some of them are touching, and that's what you want because they will bloom even further in the oven. Oh, that's a lot. So much. No. Okay, this is so satisfying. You look at it, it's just perfect, and it will droop a little bit, and you want that. You want it to settle. And then once you do this, I did it twice over just to have a thicker cross, and I love it. I love it so much. Pop them into the oven for 180 for 20-ish minutes. Now, I went slightly over and they did brown a little bit too much for me. My oven is a little bit hot, so please be mindful when you do yours. Now, they should turn out this like lovely earthy green inside, and I can't explain to you how obsessed I am.
Oh yes, it's spongy, it's soft, oh my god. I don't know about you guys, but the most iconic part about spring and about the whole Easter sort of festivity, I'm not really religious, so I don't really have any traditions at this time of the year. However, there is one thing that is a must in our bread tin, and that's hot cross buns. I will never not have one of these. However, because the flavors or the sort of the ingredients are always the same with these, I felt like changing it up. And I thought, let's make a matcha one. This is matcha with a plum glaze, a plum jam glaze. So I'm definitely so excited. Very much Asian flavors introduced to a very iconic item for this spring, specifically for Easter. Now, I know Easter is coming up, so I hope you guys enjoy the long weekend. It's well and truly due because I'm really missing these bank holidays. I'm not gonna lie, but I really want to open one of these up. So, for today on our recipe, because I'm making it super simple, I'm not overcomplicating it, is literally your classic recipe with some Asian tweaks. Look at that. Oh, some butter. It's spongy. It bounces back. Okay, so the cross section between the two are identical. And that's what I wanted to achieve with today's bake, was that it still had that really iconic like sort of textures. It's chewy, it's fluffy, and then it's a little bit sort of like you have that sort of hard like casing, because I don't know why, but this bit's really tough and hard, but it's the perfect way of like encapsulating the butter that you obviously melt. I typically have this toasted, but when they're fresh, they're so good. I can't deny it. So now with these ones, there's such a perfect match of Asian and Western culture references. Okay, so I think the real test here is always, does it work with butter? Because if you're not having it with butter, then you're a psychopath. I'm sorry. Now I've got the bottom bit. That's my favorite part of the hot cross bun. I've got some butter. It's not toasted, so this is probably going to be, everyone's going to come for me now. But the traditional hot cross bun is not toasted as well. I'm going to put it on there, and it probably will work. Butter with any form of carbs just work all the time. Okay, so it works with the matcha one. The creaminess works with the matcha one. How fun. And of course this works. I'm gonna try it. That is so fun. Has to be one of the funnest things that you have to make. You can make it with anyone. It doesn't even have to be matcha. I think you can use taro powder. You can use so many other flavors. You can use pandan. Pandan would get the same color as this. I think that's a brilliant idea. You can use pandan flavoring as well. Powder or liquid essence. Make sure you add quite a bit because with a dough, it can be quite bland. It does need something really powerful because cinnamon's a really powerful seasoning. Pandan, you need to add a little bit extra. Taro powder would also work. Imagine ube powder would work as well. Purple, green, so many things you can do with this. Anyway, let's wrap it up. I hope you guys enjoyed this recipe. I hope you guys are going to enjoy your long and well due Easter holiday weekend. It's going to be a 4-day weekend, so that's going to be really nice for everyone. I hope you guys get up to something special, and I hope you guys try this recipe because it's so worth it. I'm going to love you, leave you. Mwah. It doesn't matter. It's just good. How can you hate this? What crime has this what crime has this done?